Alaska Insight is supported in part by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by viewers just like you. Thank you.
For many decades, Alaskans of Filipino descent have been deeply connected to the culture and economy of the state.
Unlike other states in the United States, where the third largest racial group might be African Americans or Latino Americans, for Alaska, third largest group after whites and after indigenous peoples are Asian Americans.
The Filipino community of Anchorage is celebrating their 60th year as an organization. We'll discuss the history, cross-cultural connections, and plans for the future right now on Alaska Insight. Filipino people immigrated to Alaska in the 1900s to work in the lucrative fisheries industry here, but the history goes back much further. Filipino Alaskans live in communities across the state and contribute daily to the cultural and economic vibrancy of our state. Tonight we'll hear about a big anniversary for one of the Filipino associations here and learn about the history of Filipino people coming to Alaska, making it their home, and looking forward to the future. Before we get to that discussion, here are some of the top stories of the week from Alaska Public Media's collaborative statewide news network. The federal government canceled millions of dollars in grants on Monday that would have gone to Alaska's Division of Public Health over the next 2 years. A spokesperson for the State Department of Health, which oversees the division, declined an interview, but confirmed by email that the grants were terminated on Monday. The funds were meant to address the continued effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on the economy, public health, state and local governments, individuals, and businesses. The state did not give an estimate of the total amount of funding lost, but an individual within the division, who did not want to be identified because they're not authorized to speak to the media, provided documents showing the grants amounted to $25 million in funds already allocated by Congress. An additional $18 million was already awarded to state organizations and contractors. The future of those funds is now uncertain. The board of the state-run Alaska Gasline Development Corporation approved an agreement with Houston and New York-based pipeline developer Glenfarne Group on Thursday to move the project closer to a final investment decision. Under the agreement, Glenfarne would own 3/4 of the $44 billion project, which seeks to build a liquid natural gas pipeline between the North Slope and South Central, along with multiple facilities to support it. Glenfarne's first task as the new owner will be to update the project's existing cost estimate. The agreement also says Glenfarne will prioritize the pipeline piece of the project before moving to later phases. That would let Alaska customers access the gas before exports start. Though Thursday's announcement is a step forward, it's still unclear whether enough investors will sign on for the project to be built. 3 people were rescued Monday morning from the wings of a small plane after it broke through the ice on Tustamina Lake near Soldotna. The Alaska Army National Guard rescued an adult pilot and 2 passengers, both minors, at about 10:30 a.m., according to Alaska State Troopers. The flight originated from Soldotna's airport and was reported missing about 12 hours before being found. All 3 passengers were taken to Central Peninsula Hospital for non-life-threatening injuries. You can find the full version of these and many more stories on our website, alaskapublic.org, or download the Alaska Public Media app on your phone. Now on to our discussion for tonight about the rich history of Filipino people helping to build Alaska's early economy and what these vibrant communities want for the future. A video profile of Jeepney's food truck and restaurant in Anchorage highlights blended Asian cuisine, bringing Hawaii and Philippine culture together to create unique food experiences. We won't tempt you with a full food video, but you can watch it on Alaska Public Media's Indie Alaska YouTube channel. For tonight's discussion, we're focusing on a short segment featuring UAA professor E.J. David. reflecting on the history of Filipino people coming to Alaska.
You know, I remember when they were just a food truck. So I'm like a long time, client of jeepney and lover of jeepney. Filipinos in the early 1900s were recruited to work in the sugarcane plantations and pineapple plantations in Hawaii. And so many Filipinos started moving to Hawaii and to the West Coast United States following the crops, working in the farms. And then eventually, Alaska. They learned that, hey, when they got to Washington, they're like, you know what? There's this place even farther up north, Alaska, and they have salmon season, fishing season up there, and they pay a lot of money. And so a lot of those Filipino workers that were following the crops from Hawaii to the western United States ended up also being contracted to work in Alaska. And that was, again, like in the early 1900s was when large-scale migration of Filipinos began to Alaska. Asian Americans in Anchorage or in Alaska more generally composed the largest racial group outside of white folks and Alaska Native American Indians. You know, unlike other states in the United States where, the third largest racial group might be African Americans or Latino Americans, for Alaska, third largest group after whites and after indigenous peoples are Asian Americans. In Filipinos, family is number one. You prioritize your family's needs, you prioritize your family's goals. We're a collectivistic people, just like, many other people, just like Hawaiians are. And so I think that's another connection there culturally between the two communities.
Joining me tonight to help us better understand the culture and connection within the Filipino community and within the larger Asian Alaskan community here is Aurora Hovland. Aurora is a former president of the Filipino Community of Anchorage and is the longest serving member of the organization. And Mary Jo Skaggs is the current president of the Filipino American Society of Fairbanks. Welcome, both of you. Thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you for asking us.
Wonderful to have you both. Before I start asking questions about Professor David's comments and some other things, I just wanted you to talk a little bit about the beautiful regalia that you're both wearing tonight. And is it from a particular part of Philippines? Does it mean something in particular? Or please give us a little explanation.
Well, if I have to start, this is called a terno. Terno in Spanish means matching stuff. So the top and the bottom is that. And most Filipinos, when they go abroad in particular, wear this. And in the Philippines, when there's a big celebration, there is this dancing and stuff. Mrs. Marcos, the first lady before, never appear without wearing a terno.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, it's just traditional, meaning, I don't know, maybe we got it from the Spanish people.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I believe the Filipiniana, all of it is very beautiful. And you see a lot of modern Filipiniana now that's coming into fashion. And with the younger generation, they'll take some of the key pieces and elements and incorporate it into some modern twists like this collar and be able to wear them on more occasions than just the celebrations, usually birthdays, weddings, funerals. Then we have more opportunities to showcase and highlight our beautiful culture.
And so you see sort of a blending of the older, more traditional styles with kind of a new interpretation with younger folks?
Yes, yeah.
That seems great because then it keeps it vibrant into the future.
Well, yeah, my introduce, like terno here. This thing here came from the men's shirt, you know, but very, very important is the butterfly sleeve. All Filipina dresses that are called terno has a butterfly sleeve.
Butterfly sleeve, all right, beautiful. Thank you so much for helping us understand that. So in that clip, Professor David said, Filipino people are collectivists. I really liked that term. And that helps make connections within the larger Asian community in Alaska. Have you seen this cross-cultural connection across the state within Filipino or combined Asian organizations in cities beyond Fairbanks and Anchorage?
Okay, well, I think so, because way back in mid-80s. See, I used to live here from 1971 to 2018. And so Thelma Buckhold started this group, and they meet in Juneau for a conference and get together. So the Juneau members of their organization and the members of the Filipino community in Anchorage, we all there for the meeting. And so, but if you are, I felt this myself. If you are from another country, you come to any country, okay? You felt you like to hug somebody who is a Filipino.
That looks familiar.
Yeah,
Yes, of
and
course.
it's just like the belongingness that we have in our tradition. And so that's why Filipinos, when they get together, they start jabbing, and there's always food, of course.
Yes.
Mary Jo, do you see some of those connections?
I wholeheartedly agree with Aurora. When even in traveling, and for example, when my mother and I immigrated here to Alaska back in the 80s, there wasn't a recognizable Filipino community that we could just turn to. It was, going out in town, going in the stores, and you'd see somebody that may look like you, and oh, are they Filipina? And once you discovered that you were, it's an instant connection,
Right.
and it's an instant connection that connects you then, but also extends that connection pretty much through your whole life. Once you meet a Filipina, you're friends with them for your whole life, and so having that connection is so important. And even when traveling, if we seek each other out, and you'll hear somebody say, for modern terms, you might be like, "Psst, oi, Filipino," and then they'll be like, "Oh yeah," and then you just connect, and it builds that instant family where, especially when we have immigrants that come to Alaska, and we may not have a family yet, we form our family here.
So that's lovely. I really, really
For
appreciate
getting attention, in the U.S., you say something, but for Filipinos, psst,
Oi.
oi.
Yeah.
that. So we got in on a little insider code there.
right. It's just getting the attention, right?
Aurora, the Filipino community of Anchorage, as we noted, is having a big anniversary this year, the 60th anniversary.
60th, yes.
It was founded by Alfredo Agron, a man I sadly never met, but I knew his wife Pasita.
Oh.
The home that he had built for them is just about 2 blocks from my home. I used to admire her lovely flowers. Talk about Mr. Agron's passion for creating an association that brought Filipino people together and what he wanted the organization to do for its members and the larger community.
Well, I'm really lucky to have met Mr. Agron and Mrs. Agron. And by the way, if you notice, I never called older people by their name. That is one thing most Filipinos, at least from where I grew up, you will always use the word po. Or you never, if you are from the northern part, Ilocos, manong, if you're not really related and they are older than you are, you call them manong or manang for a woman. And so I always I never called him Fred. Never in the entire time that we known each other, I called them Mr. Agron and Mrs. Agron. The 17 members of the Filipino community, the founders, I never called them by their first name, except one. Except, there's always exception to the rule, right? Gaspar Avincula is a photographer, official photographer. Well, I think he has never been married, because he was by himself through the 50 years that I've been here. And so Mr. Agron, like anybody else, decided that, okay, 3 of his friends get together under the Eagle River Bridge one weekend because they were working at the base. And so, of course, they always bring their special. So these 4 gentlemen, just spend summer. Remember summer here? Nice, right? Under the bridge. And they started talking. And and so it's just kind of fun because like being your relatives get together. Okay, the next time they had a picnic, they called other men, okay? Because most of those Filipinos who came first here don't have wives, okay? I mean, I should not say that. They might have wives in the Philippines. But anyway, so they called this little group, it turned up to 17 or something, the Bachelors Club.
So it started out with just bachelors.
Yeah, because so of course, now when more Filipinos came into Anchorage with their families and stuff, they decided they're going to change this, the Bachelors Club, to include everybody. And so they decided, okay, Mr. Agron is, how will I say it? His education, although started in the Philippines, after second year, he came to the U.S., and went to work first in Seattle in a poultry farm. Oh, by the way, we Filipinos do not have F or V, so sometimes, and we don't have gender. I mean, here you call he or she. And to this date, and I'd been here, yes, in my 80-some years here, we always call siya, which I don't know so many times to this date, even my grandchildren said, Lola, you mean he? Oh, yeah, I forgot. So we don't do that.
Sure.
And so anyway, but Mr. Agron has this vision, having finished mechanical degree in San Francisco, decided, let's organize and have a real meet regularly.
Sure.
Okay.
And then it built from there.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so the next from this Bachelors Club came the Filipino Community of Anchorage and Vicinity.
Perfect. Yes.
So now there are more numbers, right?
Yes, right.
And each person who came to meetings, they just want, to talk more. Try to come to a
Yeah.
Filipino community meeting. Everybody's talking, and they want to talk. But anyway, so it took 4 years, 3 or 4 years, before they were able to make a constitution and bylaws,
But obviously did a fantastic job because it's lasted for 60 years and
right.
you're celebrating
No,
that
it's-
wonderful anniversary.
Well, but look who come as members, because it lasted that long. Because look at our honorary consul, Evelyn, at Thelma Buckhold. Well, I was a little bit more, I guess, aggressive, and Mr. Agron himself is very, has a powerful, kind of, I don't know
There's
what
a-
the term.
Like a presence.
Presence.
Sure,
Okay, thank
sure.
you. And so finally, after 3-4 years of working on these bylaws, they decided in 1965, they decided to sign it. And so the 17 members who signed them are now called founders.
Sure. That makes
So in
sense.
every banquet program,
You
you
honor
will
those
see
founders.
the founders
Yeah.
are there. And that is why it is
Still
still.
going. Fantastic. Thank you. Mary Jo, the Filipino American Society of Fairbanks formed 20 years ago, and you said that the Anchorage organization was an inspiration for your group. Talk about how the FCA helped guide your formation and how you partner today.
Sure, yeah. I think that FCAA has really laid a foundation for other organizations to form. And it inspires us around the state to take up the mantle and organize as well. So really, PhilAm Society of Fairbanks, Filipino American Society of Fairbanks, also called PhilAm, they originated in 1997, and then with Dr. Rudolph Campos, and same ideas it was to gather our people together and form that community inside of a community where they didn't know the different ways, and they wanted a way to be able to reconnect to our culture in the Philippines. And then in 2005, they reincorporated So we are a nonprofit corporation, like many of the Phil-Am organizations here in Fairbanks or in Alaska are. And we do that because we have the resources. So many of our people are so giving, and they contribute their own personal resources to build these foundations because they see the importance of being able to share our culture. And for me, as an immigrant from the Philippines, I immigrated at a very young age. And so I'm learning about my culture secondhand, really. And now my own children, they even get a more diluted version of our culture because they only experience what I tell them. So if we don't have these organizations to keep our traditions alive here in Fairbanks, or here in Alaska, we are losing that touch of our tradition and our heritage in 1-2 generations.
Oh, yeah.
It's so fast how easily it can happen. I was just speaking with Aurora beforehand, and she had mentioned too, well, you don't speak any Tagalog. I said, no, that's the first thing everybody mentions to me. It's the first thing. And I said, no, I moved here when I was 4, right before school started. And, you know, my mother wanted me to assimilate easily and, you know, blend in and be able to be accepted into the community that we were in now. And, you know, I'm appreciative of her efforts then because there wasn't, when I went into school, there was nobody else that looked like me. You know, there was nobody else that spoke like me. And now we have a larger influx of Filipinos immigrating to Alaska, to the U.S., and now we have the opportunity, for myself, I have the opportunity to reconnect with that culture. And it's really thanks to organizations, FCAA for laying that foundation, and other organizations to form throughout the state.
And Mary Jo, you help with citizenship issues for folks. Talk a little bit about that work, and if you have concerns with this disruption that we're seeing with immigration and concern, confusion for folks, what are you helping folks with now?
Sure. In a previous role that I held with the K-12 outreach at the university, I helped with Alaska Teacher Placement, and that was the Alaska Retention Center for all the school districts throughout the state. And Alaska still has an Alaska teacher shortage, and it's a major issue, and they're trying to fill these positions. And a few years back, pretty recently, we had an influx of Filipino teachers applying for these positions. And at first they were kind of dismissed. And I don't know if it was more of a questioning of, you know, their qualifications or their certifications, but also it's just the process of navigating those immigration pieces for the school districts was a challenge. Nobody knew where to start. Nobody knew how, you know, that it's such a lengthy and a complicated process. You know, who's going to take up that mantle to help pave those pathways? So with my work with the Alaska Teacher Placement and seeing that need, we have seen more teachers, more school districts embrace hiring Filipino teachers, especially through the J-1 visas. J-1 visas are a cultural exchange visa, and they're temporary. So 3 years is about the max they can get here. They can extend for 2 more years, but the teachers who are here, they aren't able to build on their 5 years of work that they've already committed to. You know, how can they extend their work? How can they continue to build upon that work? And we see the same sentiment expressed by school administrators. Sure. They want to retain these teachers. So how do we do that, you know? So it's a lot of work has to be done to help, you know, educate not just school districts, but other employers, other industry employers that Filipino workers are willing to come here, and helping them guide through these processes. And so with those conversations, I was involved with those, especially advocating for Filipinos. I was invited to help launch the Office of Citizenship Assistance. Good. And that is a resource that is provided for all legal immigrants to get the resources they need to help build and connect their lives here in Alaska.
All right, well, sadly we're almost out of time, but Aurora, I wanted to ask you, you will be giving the main speech at the weekend's celebration.
Yes.
The longest serving member. What message do you want to leave with?
Well, I
folks?
would like for the message I would like to let not just Filipino men, but all the guests, because, and before I do that, I would like to acknowledge our
We have to keep going though, because
Oh,
we're
okay,
almost
so-
out of time. Yes, sorry.
All right. Well, anyway, I would like for them to really retain the Filipino values, family, and then you have your respect for elders. And then what they call bayanihan, it's helping somebody else if they are in need.
Bayanihan. I'm so happy you brought that word back, because in the earlier interview I thought I want to remember that. Thank you so much, and thank both of you for being here, and have a wonderful, wonderful celebration.
Well,
Thank you.
you for
Thank you.
asking us.
Yes.
Yes.
Learning about the cultures of our extended family members, co-workers, and neighbors helps us learn about other customs, traditions, worldviews, and delicious food. Respectful discussions about work, family, and voter issues, or engaging in the fun of festivals and other cultural gatherings helps make important connections within our neighborhoods, and that can lead to better understanding between neighbors for building more cohesive, healthy, and happy communities. That's it for this edition of Alaska Insight. Visit our website, alaskapublic.org, for breaking news from our partner stations across the state, and sign up for our free daily digest so you won't miss any of Alaska's top stories of the day. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Lori Townsend. Good night.